So all two of you who have been following Element Ditto from the beginning might remember that I reviewed Sonic 4 Episode 1 way back when it first came out, and was actually relevant. I gave it a pretty glowing review. I quite liked it. While I still do quite like it, after playing over 30 Sonic games in the course of a year, its flaws started to become more and more apparent to me. And that's why I'm reviewing it again. I guess you can consider this my re-review. Anyway, in 2010, Sega decided it was time to listen to the longtime fans and critics and bring Sonic back to his roots, so they cleverly decided to make a side-scrolling Sonic game for pretty much every downloadable platform ever. They also were so confident with it that they actually decided to call it Sonic the Hedgehog 4. But it was also incomplete, so they slapped episode 1 on there so they could sell the rest later. I don't actually mind that because it gave time to polish up episode 2, but never mind that. This is Sonic the Hedgehog 4, episode 1. The story returns to basics, which is how I like it. Dr. Eggman is turning all the furry woodland creatures into robots, and Sonic wants to stop him. It's the same story as the older games, but I don't think that's a bad thing. There could be more story, but it definitely doesn't need time travel or government conspiracies or anything like that. Just a good guy trying to trump the bad guy. That's all well and good in my book. But the story isn't really too important when you're trying to make a game that captures the spirit of the Genesis games. The gameplay is. So, how does Sonic 4 hold up in that regard? Well, both good and bad. Sonic can still do everything he's known for. He can run really fast, spin dash, and now he can homing attack, which makes it easier to kill enemies as well as offers up a number of branching paths in the stages. The controls work well enough, but the physics are, well, off. Back when the game first came out, fellow Adamant Ditto Phil reviewed the game, specifically the physics. Let's take a look at what he had to say. Now, I'm not sure I can actually put that face into words, but I'm going to try. The physics are pretty off in this game. Like I said, Sonic controls fine, but compared to classic Sonic games, he feels very floaty. It takes longer for him to build up speed, he uncurls from a ball when he spin dashes off of a slope, making it easy to land on unseen enemies, and he can walk up the side of slopes without actually moving, as just demonstrated. It's really hard to describe, but just play this, then play Sonic 2, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They don't prevent the game from being playable, but they are the game's biggest problem. Especially considering Sega wanted so bad to return to Sonic's roots. At the time, it might have been acceptable, but after Sonic Generations did such a spot-on job, it became way more noticeable that the game had dropped the ball on that one. One thing I think this game has going for it is its stage design. The game features 4 different zones and a final boss zone, each with 3 acts and a boss. They're broken up by a level select for the first time, which is weird. It can be played in any order. They all take design cues from classic Sonic stages like Green Hill Zone, Casino Night, Metropolis, and Labyrinth Zone for whatever reason. I wish they would have been a little more creative with the basic elements of each stage, but the stages themselves are still well designed and fun to play on. Almost every stage has a unique gimmick to it, such as swinging from ropes, running on cards, and my personal favorite, lighting torches to keep it from going dark. Sure, the gimmicks might have been unnecessary, but they're only in one stage each, and they're definitely better than guns, or controlling 3 characters at once, or turning into a werewolf. The only gimmick I'm not a big fan of is running on the stone balls in Act 1 of Lost Labyrinth. I just feel like they don't control the way they're supposed to. There's only a few of them in the stage, but I find myself dying at least once every time I get to them. Other than that though, the stage design is rather good, and honestly my favorite part of the whole game. One thing I really hate though is how you have to hit a button after each act to be taken to the next act. If you don't, you're taken back to the stage select screen. It really keeps it from being a smooth adventure. It's a nitpick, but it bothers me, so I feel I should mention it. The special stages from Sonic 1 also make a return, only this time you control the whole stage rather than Sonic, and there's a time limit. And you have to collect rings to get through gates. It's like adding tedium on top of tedium! I wasn't a fan of Sonic 1's special stages, so I don't like these either. But hey, it's cool that Super Sonic is back. The bosses are all rehashes of past Sonic bosses with slight twists. The Splash Hill Zone boss is just the famous ball and chain boss from Green Hill, only sometimes he completely spins around and smashes the ground. All of the bosses are relatively easy, with the exception of the Mad Gear Zone boss. The first half is fine, but then he becomes a dreaded running boss, and I absolutely hate that. He starts throwing exploding Eggman balloons at you, and I just don't know the timing on how to dodge the big ones. It's rather obnoxious, and even worse, you have to fight it again in the Boss Rush Final Zone. The very last boss is a remake of the last boss of Sonic 2, and it's one of the easiest final bosses in any Sonic game. Just keep your distance, attack when available, hit his hands back at him, and you can beat him no problem. Just watch out for his final attack. That one got me the first time. Graphically, the game looks okay. It's a downloadable game, so it's appropriate for the medium, even if a lot of DLC games look way better. I think the environments are nice and there's a lot going on. It doesn't look as good as Generations, and I wish they would have used different tropes for the stages, like I said, but it still holds up well enough. The audio, however, does not hold up. The music in this game is really bad. It's like they were trying to go for classic Genesis style music and completely failed. The boss music is especially heinous. It's not intimidating like the older boss themes, but rather sounds like you're going to the circus to see the incredible edible Eggman. The music is bad, that's just all there is to it, which is a shame because I've always said the one thing you can count on in a Sonic game is some good tunes. I still like Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1. It's a mouthful, but I think it was a good effort from Sonic Team, and as I said, the stage design is great. There's just some problems with the physics that keep it from being more than just good, and with the release of Generations and Episode 2, that became even more apparent. It's worth checking out if you can snag it on sale or something. It's worth playing, but it's not one of Sonic's best side-scrollers. I still like it, but it's not great, is what I'm trying to say.